Good morning, this is Chris
And Brian.
reading the Society News for Friday the 13th of April 2018. On Tuesday, Laura will be attending the Our Place drop-in session, which is held at the Wight Sports and Community Centre in Mower Place, Freshwater, between 10 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. on Tuesday the 17th of April. She will have information about the Society, the clubs and activities available, as well as demonstrations of some low vision aids available. Come along and say hello and enjoy a free tea or coffee. The dolphins are swimming this Tuesday, the 17th of April, in Ryde at the waterside pool. The pool is closed to the public whilst the group swims. There are male and female volunteers to help you get in and out of the pool, as well as lifeguards to ensure your safety. To join the dolphins, please call the Society first to notify us of your swimming ability. Wednesday. The weekly coffee morning will be held at Millbrook House this Wednesday, the 18th of April. The coffee mornings are not just for blind and partially sighted people. Anybody can come along and have a cup of coffee or tea, as well as a piece of cake. The Sight for Wight Members Forum will be held on Wednesday the 18th of April from 12 till 1:30 p.m. at Millbrook House. All members are invited to attend. The deadline for submitting advance questions is Monday the 16th of April. Thursday. The Thursday Social Group are meeting on Thursday the 19th of April at Millbrook House. The group meets from 10:30 till 2 p.m. You can knit or just have a chat. Then later in the afternoon, volunteers come in and read to the group from different topics.
Any other news? Due to unforeseen circumstances, Dress for Less will be closed Saturday the 14th and Monday 16th of April. They will reopen on Tuesday 17th of April. We apologise for any inconvenience. The next golf session will be taking place on Sunday 29th of April at 10 a.m. on the driving range at Westridge Golf Centre in Ryde. Anyone interested can just turn up on the day for 1 hour of golf with an instructor for the group, followed by a cup of tea and a chat afterwards in the cafe. The cost is £3 per person. Are you a crime fiction fan or a budding author? How would you like to combine the two? Join international best-selling authors Carol and Bob Bridgestock for an evening entitled Murder Behind the Scenes. The event will showcase the television programme Written in Blood, Episode 7, which featured R.C. Bridgestock. After the programme, there will be a Q&A session over a drink and nibbles. The event is being held at Riverside Centre, The Quay, Newport, on Thursday, 19th of April at 6 p.m. As well as Carol and Bob's presence, there will also be entertainment from Emily Scotcher, professional makeup artist Pamela Clare, and Vectis Radio's Maggie and Kelvin Curry. Tickets are £6, which includes a drink and nibbles. Book now by calling Chris Kane on 522205 or email admin@iwsb.org.uk. Local volunteers from the Guide Dogs charity will be visiting a number of venues over the next few months, talking about the work of the charity and how you can be involved. They will be at Cowes Library on the 21st of April, Sandown Library on the 23rd of June, Ryde Library on the 21st of July, and Ventnor Library on the 18th of August. All the library venue times will be 10:30 a.m. till 2:30 p.m. You can also find them at Riverfest on Newport Quay on the 19th of May, 11 a.m. till 3 p.m, and the Isle of Wight Community Club Open Day at Park Road in Cowes on August the 27th from 12 noon onwards. You're invited to join us for a quiz night on Friday the 4th of May at New Close Cricket Ground, Blackwater Road, Newport, in aid of Sight for Wight. The doors open at 7 p.m, with the quiz starting at 7:30 p.m. There will be prizes for the winning team, a raffle and a lucky dip. The bar will be open for refreshments. The price is £2 per person in teams of 4. Registration is required in advance by calling 527957, leaving a message if no answer, or email tracy71pete57@hotmail.co.uk.
And now for the scaffolding news. Please find below a list of known footway obstructions for works including scaffolding or hoarding. We are unable to include the end dates as many are extended on a week-by-week basis. Also included are tables and chair permits that have been issued in the past week. Bay and Ventnor area. There is currently scaffolding at Wight City, Culver Parade, Sandown, Not Just Denham, 75 High Street, Sandown, 13 High Street, Sandown, the Carnival Shop, 79 High Street, Sandown, 64 High Street, Shanklin, the corner of Trinity Road and Madeira Road, Ventnor, number 1 Boniface Road and into Trinity Road, Ventnor, 52 High Street, Ventnor, 31 Pier Street, Ventnor, number 1 Boniface Road, Ventnor, also in Trinity Road, and number 8 Victoria Street, Ventnor. There are currently hoardings at Wight City, Culver Parade, Sandown, Premier Inn, Esplanade, Sandown. There are currently skips at 40 South Street, Ventnor, Sandown Pier, Esplanade, Sandown, 31 Garfield Road, Shanklin, and there is currently a cherry picker at numbers 27 to 31 Regent Street, Shanklin. New scaffolding is due up at the Shanklin Rock Shop, 91 to 93 High Street, Shanklin, from the 24th of April, and number 3 Downsview, Sandown, from the 27th of April. New skips are due at 33A Blythe Way, Shanklin, from the 23rd of April, and number 78 White Cross Avenue, Shanklin, from the 2nd of May.
Cowes area. There is currently scaffolding at Staplers and Green, 13 Shooters Hill, Cowes, Pascal Atkey, Grace's Bakery, High Street, Cowes. There are currently hoardings at 93 High Street, Cowes. There are currently skips at 38 St Andrews Street, Cowes, 92 Newport Road, Cowes, 27 Westhill Road, Cowes, 55 Clarence Road, East Cowes, 22 St David's Road, East Cowes. New scaffolding is due up at Totty's Fish and Chips, High Street, Cowes, from 26th of March, awaiting new dates. Royal London Yacht Club, the Parade, Cowes, from the 24th of April.
And the Newport area. There is currently scaffolding at number 38 Key Street, Newport, 18 Lugley Street, Newport, 68 Pyle Street, Newport, Alveston Mews, Pyle Street, Newport, Bryston Viaduct, Military Road, Bryston, the Waverley, 2 Clatterford Road, Newport, the rear of St Thomas's Church, St Thomas's Square, Newport, 3 and 4 Holyrood Street, Newport, Stotesbury's Fish and Chips, 43 St James's Street, Newport, Carphone Warehouse, 51 High Street, Newport. There are currently skips at 66 Upper St James's Street, Newport, and new scaffolding is due up at Domino's, St James's Street, Newport, from the 23rd of April.
Ryde area. There is currently scaffolding at Rose Court, George Street, Ryde, 40 Union Street, Ryde, 78 George Street, Ryde, 23 to 23A Union Street, Ryde, Diamond Pet Shop, 168 High Street, Ryde, Ada, 55 Union Street, Ryde. There are currently skips at Bottom of Pier Road, Seaview, Sand Cove, Pier Road, Seaview. New scaffolding is due up at Wight's Fish and Chips, 41 to 42 High Street, Ryde, from the 9th of May. New skips are due at Mountain Warehouse, 167 High Street, Ryde, dates to be confirmed.
The West Wight area. There is currently scaffolding at Everson's Funeral Directors, the Broadway, Topland, Brooklands, Queen's Road, Freshwater, south side of Town Hall, Market Square, Yarmouth. There are currently skips at 4 Queen's Terrace, Queen's Road, Freshwater. There is currently a cherry picker at St James's Church, the Square, Yarmouth. New scaffolding is due up at Memorial Hall, Avenue Road, Freshwater, from the 23rd of April. And then this week's In Touch. In Touch. In this week's episode, RNIB in crisis over Pears Centre. Peter Wight talks to RNIB Chair Eleanor Southwood about the circumstances leading to the recent and sudden resignation of CEO Sally Harvey, and the plans the charity has for both its own leadership and also that of its Pears Centre, recently the subject of a critical Ofsted report. Disability specialist Ian McRae comments on what Ellie says. And now for the headlines of today's County Press, the 13th of April. Beauty spot is under threat. National Trust volunteers have warned a tide of commercialisation threatens to engulf Newtown National Nature Reserve. They have said enough is enough when it comes to visitors and fear for the future of the reserve if numbers continue to grow. 2 volunteers said they were sacked after objecting to the Trust's plans for the visitor centre, and it is understood 2 more and a member of staff have subsequently quit. An application to improve the centre by replacing doors and windows and redesigning the building's interior, banishing a much-loved mural to a small meeting room in the process, was approved by the Isle of Wight Council last month. The row over the centre, coupled with plans to provide tea and cake, prompting concerns about litter, have seen volunteers decry moves to commercialise the reserve, a haven for rare birds including curlews and lapwings. 15 signed a letter to the Trust's General Manager on the island, Tony Tutton, voicing their concerns. Former volunteer James Alloway, who was sacked alongside Val Gwynn, a warden for more than 30 years, said, "These are small measures, but it shows the direction the Trust is moving in. It wants to encourage visitors, but if more people come, they will harm this sensitive site." There is a fine line between people enjoying the reserve and too many people damaging it. It's a nature reserve. It's not a visitor attraction in the same way as a stately home, but the Trust doesn't understand that. He said the number of visiting boats had increased from around 40 a day in the 1970s to around 200, and kayakers and paddleboarders risked disturbing nesting birds. Mr. Tutton said the Trust could not stop more people visiting Newtown, but did not actively promote it. However, that day a nature-themed bear hunt was advertised.
Crazy time for Oscar and BAFTA winner Lucy. A former Carisbrooke High School student has achieved global success as a makeup artist, winning a BAFTA and an Oscar for her work on the acclaimed Second World War film Darkest Hour. Lucy Sibic, 35, was one of the artists who transformed Gary Oldman into Winston Churchill, together with colleagues David Malinowski and Katsuhiro Shui. The film won 42 awards, including the Best Actor BAFTA and Oscar for Gary Oldman, and Artisan Award for Best Makeup at the Hollywood Makeup Artist and Hair Stylist Guild Awards. Lucy, who grew up on the island and now lives in St Albans, Hertfordshire, said she was delighted to join fellow Isle of Wight Oscar winners Anthony Minghella and Jeremy Irons in the history books. "It's amazing. It's like winning the lottery," she said. "We didn't think all our names would be on the BAFTA because it's really unusual to include the whole team, but because David and I had so much input into Gary's makeup and it was so central to the film, we were all on it. It was Gary's wife who texted me to say I'd been nominated. She said, 'Lucy Sibic, BAFTA nominee, sounds pretty good.' I've always avoided public speaking, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to go to these awards. After that, it went crazy. It all happened so quickly. We went to LA for the Guild Awards and the Oscars, which was an incredible experience. It's like a military operation. I think there are more people working behind the scenes than at the actual ceremony." After leaving the island to study fine art at Liverpool John Moores University, Lucy started working as a makeup artist via a slightly unusual route, the Channel 4 soap Hollyoaks. A fan of the show, she wrote asking for work experience and enjoyed it so much she stayed working odd days while studying makeup design at a local college. "I thought if I enjoyed painting, maybe I would enjoy painting people's faces," said Lucy, who moved to LA to complete a 3-month course before returning to the UK, where she honed her skills on television shows, including Holby City and Casualty 1906. Her film credits include the David Cronenberg film Eastern Promises, Zoolander 2, and the Brad Pitt zombie film World War Z. She is currently working on the final series of Game of Thrones. Working on Darkest Hour was incredible in so many ways. The makeup was challenging and interesting, and I was able to work with some amazing people. It was a really stressful shoot, as we were such a small team, but it paid off in the end, she said. "Eventually, I would like to lead my own makeup design projects. I'd love to work on a creature film." Lucy, who wore black to the BAFTAs to show her support for the Time's Up and Me Too campaigns against sexism and harassment, said it was important women were recognised for their work.
Warning of HMRC scam calls. Islanders have been victims of a telephone scam involving callers claiming to be from Revenue and Customs, HMRC. Police have issued a warning after a number of residents reported calls. One Bembridge resident received a malicious phone call from someone supposedly from HMRC saying she owed £1,984 in unpaid tax. She said, "I said I didn't owe tax, had an accountant, but he said there was an underpayment and letters had been sent to me which could not be delivered. I told him there was no way I was going to pay this amount over the telephone, and his reply was the police would be round. I would be arrested and would have to go to court. My answer was, come and arrest me then. I'm going to be 82 this year and think I'm fairly with it, but it did shake me up." Police are reminding islanders to protect themselves by giving the following advice. Never give personal or bank account details to anyone who contacts you unexpectedly. Never tell anyone your PIN. If you have given out information which could compromise your bank security in any way, call your bank to cancel your cards as soon as possible. Never hand over your card, money or valuables to someone at the door to be sent off elsewhere. If you are concerned about an unsolicited phone call from someone you do not know who asks you to hand over money, report this to the police by calling 101. National Fraud and Cybercrime Reporting Centre Action Fraud said HMRC will never use text to tell you about a tax rebate or penalty or ever ask for payment in this way. Telephone numbers and text messages can easily be spoofed. Never trust the number you see on your telephone's display.
Dover Path closing. News a popular coastal footpath is to be closed for the summer has sparked concern among St Helens residents and businesses. The footpath will be closed between St Helens Dover and the Mill Warehouse from Monday, possibly until the end of October, enabling renovation works to be carried out on the building. Concerns have been raised about the impact on tourist businesses in the area. Paul Knowlson, owner of Baywatch on the Beach, said it would have a profound effect. He said, "We only open from April to October, and the footpath is one of the main ways people access Baywatch. It's the only level walk from some areas of the village." Permission was given to close the path by the Isle of Wight Council, and although notice of the closure was available on the council's website, residents said a sign was only put up 6 days before the path was due to be closed. Mike Curtis, Vice Chair of Bembridge Parish Council, said it gave people 6 days' notice for a 6-month closure of a footpath that tens of thousands of people use in the summer. Isle of Wight Council officers and members are due to meet with stakeholders next week to discuss concerns. Councillor Dave Stewart, leader of the Isle of Wight Council, said the landowner already has approval for the development and has consent to close the path to undertake the works, but we will be exploring options to reduce the impact on walkers, especially as this closure would happen during the summer season. St Helens Parish Council Chairman Joe Robertson said, "We appreciate the importance of the proposed restoration work, but are seriously concerned about the disruption that will result and the impact this will have on the local economy." The planning application was submitted by Kate Gattenby, who has recently bought a number of large properties in St Helens, including the castle. She has been blogging about her restoration project.
Mysterious case of dumped roosters. More than 15 live cockerels were dumped in Bryston Forest last weekend in a cruel and irresponsible act. At least once a year for the past 5 years, groups of cockerels have been left near the Lynch Lane entrance to the forest, disturbing residents and concerning animal welfare services. Kay Ounsworth, who runs bird rescue organisation Mr. Wally AWOL and Friends, said, "It's cruel, irresponsible and just pure laziness, as there is certainly no need to dump them. Without active members of the community able and willing to catch, secure and look after these birds, it is likely they would starve to death, catch infections or be caught by predators." Following Kay's Facebook appeal, Christopher Plant of Tyres of Wight helped Kay catch some of the birds. They spent 2 hours catching 7 birds and confirmed 3 had died. They believe 7 remain in the Bryston Forest area. The birds they managed to catch, which have been named after the 7 dwarfs, had injuries. It is likely whoever dumped the cockerels was interested in keeping hens for eggs, but not male chickens, which are difficult to look after and rehome. Anyone who catches any of the birds can contact Kay on 07765 564479 or Claire at Wild Bird Aid. And those interested in helping can leave seed to keep the birds healthy and alive. Kay is seeking information from anyone who has seen chickens which look like the ones in the picture on the island or noticed a sudden reduction of roosters crowing or fewer cockerels in a certain area. The incident has been reported to the police and the RSPCA.
Newport Street Food Market to close. Newport Street Food Market comes to an end today, Friday. The trial market, organised by I Love Wight and backed by the Isle of Wight Council, originally started in Newport Harbour but later moved to St Thomas's Square. Organisers Sarah Truckle and Tamara Purvis said the harbour area required a lot of investment from the Isle of Wight Council, and with only 2 or 3 traders signed up for the next few months, the market had been called off. I Love Wight said, "It is with heavy hearts we have decided by mutual consent with the council to end the trial of the street food market in Newport after this Friday. We have worked hard to find local traders to serve hot food weekly to the people of Newport. But if there are any other mobile traders who are set up to do a weekly market, we've unfortunately not been able to find them or convince them to join us. So come down to St Thomas's Square on Friday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. for a final farewell to the Newport Street Food Market. I Love Wight will continue to run its popular food market in Brading, with the next one taking place on Saturday, April the 28th. Rhaenyra O'Donnell, Assistant Director of Regeneration at the Isle of Wight Council, said, "We're sorry I Love Wight is unable to take forward the street food market as we had hoped. We'd like to thank them for their efforts and we wish them well. We're passionate about the project, and we will be seeking any potential new providers to work with us to continue to bring this exciting opportunity to Newport Harbour.
Top radio show comes to Ventnor. BBC Radio 4's flagship political programme Any Questions is coming to Ventnor Winter Gardens on Friday, June the 1st, and will be broadcast live across the UK. The programme tours the country, giving the public a chance to ask questions of a panel of 4 people on the most stimulating moral, political and social issues of the day. The host is Jonathan Dimbleby, and the panel includes leading politicians and people prominent in public life, who the BBC will select in the days running up to the broadcast. Members of the Winter Gardens audience will be able to submit questions. If their question is selected by the BBC, they will appear on the radio putting their question to the panel. John Allen, Winter Gardens Marketing Director, told the County Press he was very excited to have this iconic BBC Radio 4 programme in Ventnor after the success of Mark Steele's In Town last September, which was pretty merciless in poking fun at the town. Tickets are free and can be obtained in person from Ventnor Winter Gardens in Pearse Street from today, Friday, during normal opening hours. They will be limited to 2 tickets per person on a first-come, first-served basis. Any Questions is in its 70th year and can be heard on BBC Radio 4 at 8 p.m. on Friday, with a repeat on Saturday at lunchtime. Around 1.5 million people listen each week.
34 dog owners fined. More dog owners on the Isle of Wight have been fined for not microchipping their dogs than anywhere else in the country. A Freedom of Information request by Pets at Home revealed 34 dog owners on the island had been fined £25 each by the Isle of Wight Council. The island topped the table for the number of fines, although owners here had to pay less than in other areas and no one had been prosecuted. Coventry City Council issued the second highest number of fines, with 19 owners having to pay £159 each. There are also 19 prosecutions. In Hounslow, London, there was just 1 fine and prosecution of £1,932.50. The government introduced compulsory microchipping around 2 years ago to make tracking down missing dogs easier and to make it simpler for councils to identify owners of dangerous dogs. Dr. Maeve Moorcroft, head of Pets at Home, said, "The results of our Freedom of Information request are somewhat surprising, and what we found most of note was how much the fines charged by councils varied across the country. Microchipping is a simple and cheap procedure that doesn't hurt a dog in any way, and it's vital responsible pet owners obey this law. We'd urge dog owners to take steps to get their canine microchipped, firstly for the health and safety of their 4-legged friend, and secondly to comply with the law and avoid potentially hefty fines."
YouTube inspired Callie's cut. After seeing the idea on YouTube, a 6-year-old decided to cut her hair off for charity. Callie Bancroft, a pupil at 9 Acres Primary School, Newport, had just over 12 inches chopped off, which she donated to the Little Princess Trust. She raised more than £1,025 too, in just over a fortnight, which she is giving to Mountbatten Hospice. Her mother, Laura, said she saw it on YouTube and was determined this was what she wanted to do. She was really good, although a bit nervous beforehand. I thought she was going to bottle it. Her face was sad when she first handed her ponytail, but now she loves her new look. Callie's hair was cut at O'Hanlon and Ray Salon in Newport.
£8,000 in food hygiene fines. The franchisee of 2 Subway outlets in Ryde pleaded guilty to 12 hygiene offences. Offences included poor cleanliness and lack of staff supervision and training. Fines totalled £12,000, reduced to £8,000 for an early guilty plea, and the Isle of Wight Council was awarded £3,845 in court costs. Officers from the local authority's Environmental Health Department visited both Ryde premises on numerous occasions. Despite the council's intervention, the franchisee failed to meet the legal requirements which led to prosecution. The franchisee, Shrixon Limited of Edgware, Middlesex, pleaded guilty to 12 offences at the Isle of Wight Magistrates' Court. Food establishments which fail to meet hygiene standards risk prosecution, the council has warned. Rachel Briscoe, Business Regeneration and Public Protection Team Manager, said, "This case underlines the importance of food businesses following food hygiene procedures. It's not just about paperwork. A key element is producing safe food. We expect all food businesses to comply with the law and ensure consumers are not at risk. Advice and assistance is given, but if non-compliance is repeated or when serious offences are identified, we will prosecute, not only to protect the public, but ensure a level playing field for the vast majority of island business who do comply."
Houses and flats plan for former reservoir. More than 145 new homes could be built on the former Somerton Reservoir in Cowes. Plans have today been published on the Isle of Wight Council's planning website for the site off Newport Road, Cowes. The proposal seeks permission for 28 homes, 3 blocks of flats comprising 72 units and 1 block of assisted living accommodation comprising 44 units. The plans also include parking, new vehicle access and landscaping. An existing bungalow would also be demolished if the plans were approved.
Isle of Wight Zoo's jaguar dies. Tequila, the Isle of Wight Zoo's 19-year-old jaguar, has died. She had been fighting myeloma, a form of blood cancer. The zoo announced her death via post on Facebook on Tuesday, saying, "It is with very heavy hearts we announce the passing of our dearest Tequila. We did everything we could for her, but took the decision today to say goodbye as we were not winning her battle. She wore her spots proudly and was adored by so many. We're proud to have been her friend."
Concerns voiced over development. Plans for a housing development in Freshwater have prompted concerns among residents who have called for more affordable homes. The Meadows scheme at Colwell Road, submitted by Fareham developer Kensington Homes, includes plans for 20 houses, 7 of which would be affordable, plus parking. It already has outline planning permission. Residents who attended a meeting of Freshwater Parish Council's Planning Committee earlier this month said the houses that would be sold at market rate were too expensive for local people. Further concerns were raised. One of the homes at 3 stories would be too large and about the impact of the development on wildlife. Comments can be made on the Isle of Wight's website until Thursday.
New High Sheriff's Year of Projects. There's a new sheriff in town as Goya Minghella Giddens has been sworn in as the Isle of Wight High Sheriff at Northwood House. Judge Peter Rawls presided over the ancient ceremony in the presence of the Isle of Wight Lord Lieutenant and more than 150 guests to celebrate the newest appointment by the Queen. Goya, the eldest daughter of Edward and the late Gloria Minghella, was born and raised on the island and now lives in Haven Street. She was a successful teacher for more than 25 years on the island and in London before relocating to take over the family ice cream business. She said, "This dual pathway has given me first-hand experience of working with young people from diverse backgrounds and of helping them find their feet as mature members of the community, as well as the many challenges facing businesses and employers here on the island. Equally, my family's well-known commitment to community service means I am well aware of the challenges faced by all the wonderful, often unsung heroes who do so much for others on a voluntary basis." In her address, Goya said she looked forward to the privilege of her year as High Sheriff as an opportunity to become involved in community projects, particularly those which bring together and value both young people and senior citizens, those that protect heritage and those which encourage the arts.
Family's tribute to beautiful soul who lived life to the full. The family of a funny, happy girl paid tribute to her after an inquest on Tuesday. Scarlett Amber Higgins, 21, of Wroxall Close, Northwood, died after an epileptic fit in October last year. During the inquest at the Isle of Wight Coroner's Court, her family paid tribute to her. Miss Higgins' family said, "Scarlett was a beautiful soul who lived life to the full. She was always so full of love and laughter and brightened up our lives, the lives of everyone, one in a million who can never be replaced. Sorely missed every second of every day, Scarlett was hilarious and full of witty banter. Loyal and protective of those she loved, she was a joy to be around and had an admirable strength of character. Scarlett lived life on her terms and was loved unconditionally. Family and friends are devastated by her loss. Scarlett will be eternally loved and missed." The court heard Miss Higgins had been diagnosed at a young age with epilepsy after a teacher at Gurnard Primary School recommended her family have her checked by a doctor after she suffered absent seizures, also known as petit mal seizures, at school. Absent seizures are short and can have symptoms that are barely noticeable. Since diagnosis, Miss Higgins took medication to control her seizures, but still had them intermittently. In a statement read out in court, Amanda Lucy Dale, Miss Higgins' mother, said she was at work on the evening of October the 14th when she received a call saying there was an ambulance outside her house. She rushed home and a paramedic said her daughter had died. Miss Higgins had been for a night out with friends the night before she died, and a post-mortem found evidence she had drunk alcohol and taken cocaine. The consultant pathologist said cocaine was a stimulant drug and could cause an epileptic fit. Coroner Caroline Summeray said Scarlett Amber Higgins was by all accounts a lively, much-loved and full of life 21-year-old lady. She enjoyed going out and having a drink and a dance, as you do when you are young. If one good thing can come from this tragedy, it is a lesson that can be learnt from this death. Think twice before you take in large amounts of alcohol and cocaine. Your risk is so much greater if you have epilepsy. And it's goodbye from Chris.
And Brian.
Good morning, this is Madeline.
And this other voice is me, Peter. And I've got a letter here from written by an Ian Lee of Cowes, who says, I found it interesting to read about James Hodges' dream, and I hope his passion for football continues for many more years after his sons finish playing. Sadly, most parents disappear at that stage. We do, in fact, have an Isle of Wight team that comes together to compete in the Island Games. This team is made up of players mainly from Wessex League clubs, and the same clubs he finds it difficult for young players to aspire to, who have put in the hard work and dedication to play at that level, where the commitment to train twice a week, then travel away every other week, the play is immense. Rather than having a central location conveniently positioned on the land adjacent to the proposed new Newport ground with 7 or 8 4G pitches, as he is proposing, my dream would be different, more inclusive, and just may help provide the answer to James's dream and not give the developers an even more valuable site. I would propose a 4G pitch which sited in every larger town on the island. This would definitely encourage all age groups and sports to use this all-weather facility. Each pitch to be built on council-owned land and run by the Isle of Wight Council or the local council to raise funds for sports in each community. If the land is not available in some areas, then a partnership with local schools to use their sports fields may work, but there would have to be a commitment for any charges to be fair and affordable. This would enable the schools to benefit all the time and hopefully attract more funding streams. To run the football teams at any level needs a massive amount of support, commitment and funding. The higher level your team plays at determines the level of funding required to keep the club operational. And that's that.
And from Ian Mackay in Totland, no Isle of Wight University. Bob Seeley's call for an island university has demonstrated what an exceptionally thin grasp of joined-up thinking he has, or what a cynical operator he is. Firstly, there are already more than 130 universities in the UK, begging the question, why do we need one more? Secondly, what would be the calibre of the staff teaching at the Isle of Wight University? With the market already saturated, I expect the quality of lecturers would be bottom of the barrel, making the Isle of Wight University a deadweight loss in terms of economic and social benefit. Thirdly, where would all the students and staff be accommodated, and what impact would this have on the island's infrastructure? Why does he expect all island residents would want to go to his university? I expect the smart ones will still go to the universities with a long-proven record of academic achievement. Finally, how would this university be paid for? Either taxes would go up or there would be a diversion in funding from within the budget at the expense of pre-existing universities. But Bob Seeley knows a university will never be founded on the island. He is merely making noises, consistent with his spin doctor background, to make him sound good. I am just surprised he has not suggested the Isle of Wight host the Olympic Games.
And there's more sporting letters here. Here's one from Liz Bell of Ryde, who says, I was recently presented with an IW Sports Foundation Award for my work with the IW Asthma Swim Group, which I founded 30 years ago. However, I could not have done this with all the help I've received behind the scenes, and I'd like to give credit to all the others involved. First in line is Liz Alchin and her family, who took over ages ago as chief swim trainer poolside. Then there is the committee led by Chairman Phil Palmer, Treasurer Tony Butt, plus Chief Fundraiser Maureen, that's Mo, Wakeman. and Patsy Grace and Janet Stewart have supported all the aims of IOWAS, i.e. to enable people of all ages to exercise in the most safe atmosphere for them. Funding has been kept alive by Mo until recently, but it is now the sole responsibility of Tony, and the membership cost is just £5 per family per year. The award is for all of them too.
And from Terry Richardson at Binfield, houses for who? What next for the Cowes marine industry? I suppose we should not be surprised at the result of the planning application to develop the marine industrial land in Cowes, but we should be saddened. That site alone has trained thousands of boat builders, joiners, platers, engineers, painters and more. Now it will be demolished to make way for 500 plus apartments with insufficient parking. We need more houses, the council says. Well, maybe, but houses for who? Not the island's younger generation looking for their first home. A cynic may point out the annual additional council tax income is not an insignificant amount, certainly when compared to any commercial rates. The site is dilapidated, the council says. Not surprising after many years of zero investment in the infrastructure and short-term leases for the resident businesses. New marine premises are included, the council tells us, and indeed they are, a small part of the site at the shallow end of the frontage. But wait, they say, a new facility is planned for East Cowes. I believe that was mentioned when the planning was passed for Red Funnel. So all's well. Sometime in the future there will be a development on a greenfield site on the shallow banks of the Medina.
And there's a letter from Martin Cave of Rookley, and it's a St George's Day display. In AD 937, King Athelstan, the grandson of Alfred the Great, leading his English army, defeated a combined force of Danes, Scots and the Welsh to establish Wessex as the source of authority for our monarchs. And in AD 954, King Eldred drove out and killed the last Viking king of York, Rick Bloodaxe, and from this time England was permanently and formally ununited. Centuries before nations such as Germany, France and Italy were ever imagined. EU maps of the UK show Scotland, Wales and Ireland, but no England. So when we leave the EU on the March the 29th, 2019, allegedly, we will be taking the first solid step to securing England. Pressure is now building for a St George's Day holiday, and on Monday, April the 23rd, I will again be carrying our flag from Cowes to Newport. So please wave or toot as you drive by.
And from Christopher Dodd in Newport, save our harbour. This is an urgent appeal to those residents, visitors and taxpayers who have affection for our lovely old harbour at Newport. The harbour we love is actually a Department of Transport registered municipal port still, just working. It is used importing thousands of tons of aggregates every year, as some boatyard uses, but is mostly used for leisure boating of all kinds. It is undoubtedly a community asset, but it is owned and utterly neglected by the Isle of Wight Council, hence its very run-down state. If only they could give it some TLC. Now this council is applying for quite drastic new powers in a new harbour revision order, which will, in our opinion, allow it to cause the final ruin of our harbour. Details can be viewed in County Hall or on the Marine Management Organisation website. There will be a Facebook page to look at before the end of the week with lots of info. In the meantime, please contact the NH Group Secretary on cwd28@live.com. Please will everyone willing to support our harbour agree to object to this order, which will become legal if we do nothing.
And here's a rather unusual letter from Sylvia Ashpole of Winford, and she calls it an awful idea because she says, I have just been reading about the proposed Pooh museum being developed in Sandown and had to refer to the newspaper's front page to check the date. And no, it wasn't April the 1st. What's more unbelievable is the supposed appeal for celebrity offerings. Well, the council need not concern themselves with that, because with the rate of toilet closures on the island, we will all be doing it outside soon, so they will be spoilt for choice. While I'm glad to see that my increased council tax enables the council to give £15,000 to this barking mad project, might I suggest that if they are so interested in poo, the money might be better spent emptying the dog bins so we can actually use them.
And moving on to looking back, and 100 years ago, on April the 13th, 1918, islanders mourned the death of Mr. W.E. Grant, the respected headmaster of Ryde Upper School. He oversaw Ryde School's move from a boys' school to a mixed school, and his death deprived the school of one of its foremost leaders. He was known as Skipper Grant and was a keen swimmer, footballer and cricketer. The Cowes and East Cowes Trades and Labour Council and delegates from island trade unions held a conference to consider forming an Isle of Wight Labour Party. A number of the executives of the Trades and Labour Councils were in attendance, and the chairman proposed a Labour Party be formed. The speaker detailed the good work which such a party could do.
And 75 years ago, you may have forgotten this, April the 10th, 1943, Wallace M. Cawes of Ryde retired from the Isle of Wight Pilots Service after 43 years. The first record of any member of the Cawes family being a pilot was in 1741, and Mr. Cawes' 6 sons were all pilots. Mr. Cawes was appointed first-choice pilot for the American line and piloted the Adriatic on her maiden voyage when she was the largest ship in the world. And another thing is that the island received some light relief with a good music thanks to the National Council for the Encouragement of Music and the Arts. And the Treasury grant it provided allowed concerts at Trinity Hall, Cowes, and Ryde Town Hall, as well as Newport Schools and a cafe in Shanklin.
And 50 years ago, on April the 6th, 1968, improvements to dental facilities on the island was mentioned in a report by the Principal Medical Officer. The delivery of a mobile dental clinic, a trailer equipped to a high standard, enabled good service to rural schools. A total of 12,000 children received dental inspections at schools or clinics during the year. Nearly 100 people attended a birthday party for the East Cowes Women's Section at St James's Hall in East Cowes. Chairman of East Cowes Women's Section, Mrs D. Hounsell, welcomed members of the County Women's Section and from all over the island in celebration. A fancy dress parade, piano playing and dancing and games filled the fun evening.
And 25 years ago, April the 8th, 1993, Medina Council said it was satisfied with the progress Robin Hill was making following demands for improvements a year before. Owners claimed between £40,000 and £60,000 was spent to comply with the council's requirements and introduce new features. And the Heinz Good Beach Guide slated Sandown in the pre-publicity for the guide. The South Wight Borough Council called for the guide to be withdrawn, saying the slur amounted to a major attack on the island's tourist industry. A statement the beach's water quality had failed the test turned out to be false.
10 years ago, on April the 11th, 2008, the Isle of Wight Council announced plans to shut Kitbridge Middle School after it failed its Ofsted report. Kitbridge was placed into special measures and plans were released to merge it with Downside Middle School. The timing of the report, the first day of the Easter holidays, caused controversy among parents. Amy Winehouse's return to the island was announced as headliner of a festival. The troubled UK star had played at the Isle of Wight Festival previously, and tickets for the festival started selling out fast after the announcement.
Mm-hmm. And here's a story in Wight Memories from a mystery from the early days of the fire brigade. An antique clock, which was presented to the captain of Ryde Fire Brigade in 1905, was discovered in a second-hand shop in North Carolina, USA. Ryde Farms Fire Station was contracted out of the blue in February by Bob Candatra of Fairview, North Carolina, USA, who said he'd bought an old clock from a second-hand shop nearby and noticed it had an engraved plaque. The plaque was a dedication to Captain Sidney Charles Sapsworth, who was made captain of Ryde Fire Brigade in 1897. And the clock had been given to him by the Ryde firemen in 1905 as mark of the esteem to which they held him. Bob and his wife Beth felt it was appropriate the clock was returned to the fire station, so they got in touch. Having purchased the clock, Bob asked for nothing from Ryde Fire Station and even paid for and arranged its carriage from the USA back to Ryde. Damon Corr, the Ryde Station manager and avid researcher of island firefighting history, said, "Between us, we've been unable to establish how the clock ended up in the United States. All of Captain Sapsworth's children died here in the UK between 1958 and 1975, and no record has been found of any of them having spent any time abroad." Mr. Corr provided the county press with a detailed history of Captain Sapsworth's time with Ryde Fire Brigade. He was appointed the captain of Ryde Fire Brigade in April 1897, having previously been captain of the Richmond Fire Brigade in Surrey for 14 years. The town council had advertised for applicants, and the Fire Brigade committee reported several were received. It was testimonials for Mr. Sapsworth's service in Richmond that tipped the balance in his favour. He came to Ryde with his wife Henrietta and two daughters, Lillian Florence and Marion Olive, and opened a bicycle sales and repair shop at 25 High Street, Ryde. In 1901, Henrietta gave birth to a son, Leslie Hector, and when Queen Victoria visited Ryde during her Diamond Jubilee year of 1897, Captain Sapsworth had his men erect their two escape ladders to form an arch above the approach road to the Victoria Pier, from which they draped a banner stating 1837 to 1897 VR, plus the brigade's motto, "Always Ready." And when the Queen passed them, the firemen were each perched standing to attention on the rungs of the ladder. Mr. Corr said Captain Sapsworth was the driving force behind some of the key evolutions in Ryde Fire Brigade's history. In 1898, he insured for the first time the firemen's homes with bells installed that were connected by telephonic cables to the police station and the town hall so they could be called out more efficiently. And in November 1901, such was his influence within fire brigade circles, he was featured in The Fireman, a national magazine dedicated to the country's brigade activities. And in 1904, he was a major force behind Ryde Town Council's decision to build the brigade a proper fire station. Up until then, the brigade had operated out of a rudimentary storage area at the underside of the town hall, which opened up to Market Street. And the hinges that once had held the large station doors are all that remain by the now bricked-up archways. And the new station in Brunswick Street, renamed Station Street near the end of the First World War due to its association with the German city of the same name in Lower Saxony, was first inhabited by the brigade in 1904, and where, with modifications over the years, the brigade remained until the mid-1960s. In 1905 and 1906, at Ryde's Theatre Royal, Captain Sapsworth and his men turned actors to perform the role of London firemen in the final scene of the play Streets of London. Perhaps his greatest achievement in January 1908, after 7 years of persistently badgering the council, Captain Sapsworth secured Ryde's first steam-powered fire engine. Up until then, the town had made do with a manual pump. In March 1908, he had the ignominy of suffering a fire in the living room of his own home in St Thomas's Square. Though he spotted the fire in its early stages and called the brigade using a public alarm post in the square, the room was severely damaged, smoke blighting the rest of the property. And finally, on October the 8th, 1908, the steam pump, a Merryweather Gem, was delivered from London. It was brought to St Thomas's Square in front of the Theatre Royal, where the Mayor's daughter, Miss Mears, christened it. The steam engine was then brought to life after Councillor Arthur Teague, chairman of the Fire Brigade Committee, applied a match to the engine. And the packed crowd must have been soaked as the hoses were used to direct strong jets of water high in the air to show the power of the machine. And in October 1910, Captain Sapsworth tendered his resignation and left the next month to pursue a business opportunity on the mainland. And he died in November the 30th, 1926, in Tonbridge, Kent, aged 65, after a long illness, and was buried in Richmond.
From Alan Marriott, County Press bids farewell to Island treasures. Life moves on, as they say, and the County Press has said farewell to a number of familiar faces in the past few months. Although colleagues in other departments were no less valued or their company less enjoyed, two of the people who have moved closer to retirement are ones whom the public knew particularly well. They were stalwarts of the newsroom, and although very different people, they made their mark around the island over several decades. Photographer Peter Boehm was a man of few words, and it was perhaps surprising that this shy chap chose a career as a local newspaper snapper, which brought him into daily contact with Joe Public, some of them less keen than others to have their picture taken. When I arrived at the County Press as sports editor back in 1984, Pete was already there as the paper's first staff photographer. His new apprentice, Steve Brading, a Newport lad, was hanging on his every word about the dark art of taking a decent pic. The three of us shared a tiny office in the Rabbit Warren, which was the old County Press office in the High Street. They used to zoom off in the company minis to do their work. On their return, Pete would dunk his film in chemicals in the dark room attached to our office. God only knows what effect all those chemicals wafting around had on us. Steve moved on to mainland papers, and many other snappers came and went, including the legend that is Chris Thwaites, plus a succession of young hopefuls. But Pete remained the constant, always there, getting on with it and turning out at fires, floods and other catastrophes. He embraced the changes in technology with enthusiasm, as digital cameras got more and more complex, and content management systems equally so. But to praise his skills in the darkroom and behind a lens fails to address his real benefit to the paper, his recognition by the populace. Everyone knows Pete. Perhaps more than anyone, he is Mr. County Press, and that ambassadorial role will be sorely missed as he slides off into retirement with his camper van and partner for company. There is a saying that goes, "You don't know what you've got until it's gone," and this is perhaps true of Richard Wright. While not wanting to underplay his role as an accomplished reporter and experienced brain in the newsroom, what I perhaps didn't realise readers really relished was his weekly gardening column and the time and care taken to collate our Wight heritage pages. These cogs in the County Press system are not easily replaced, and although James Wolven is keeping us stocked with nostalgia, The green-fingered among us are missing Richard's root and branch approach. Mr. Wright loves a pun to all things horticultural. And it says much of the affection his colleagues held Richard in that he was never once slapped around the chops for his well-meant but sometimes ill-judged jokes to his workmates. Good taste prevents me from repeating them, but suffice to say, Richard knew people's weak points. Richard came to the county press from the old Weekly Post, Portsmouth News ride offices, and along with the team from the Southampton Echo was part of a golden era of Isle of Wight journalism, when there were more reporters than policemen per square yard. Times change, and with the county press as the only print product still standing, these characters are further and fewer between, although we do have quality reporters still holding the authorities to account. We will miss Pete and Richard's presence in the newsroom and wish them well in their golden years.
And there's another thing from Jonathan Young, which he says is the good, the loud and the Marmite. My relationship, he says, with the Isle of Wight Conservative Association never really took off, and for that I have to thank my late mother. Back in the 1970s, Mum belonged to the Ladies' Glade, an offshoot of the Royal Antediluvian Order of Buffaloes, the Buffs. They met in the local con club, where Babysham was very reasonably priced. Mum wasn't a Tory, more a fan of Liberal Steve Ross, easily the island's best MP in living memory. His legacy, the 1977 Housing or Homeless Persons Act. At the general election, we had Steve's poster in our window. The Tories sent people round putting down names on a little list. Mum's name went on the list, and the list was compared to the list of people allowed into the club. They took their custom elsewhere, and I learned about solidarity, which brings me to Chris Whitehouse, easily the island's loudest councillor in living memory. His legacy, well, let's leave that to private contemplation. Chris, whose intrepid forays into the unmapped Badlands at the edge of spin deserves a Fodor minor glide. He's also quarrelling with the IWCA. He'd taken exception to their choice of chairman, the no longer youthful David Pugh, easily the island's most Marmite council leader in living memory. His legacy an albatross of a PFI contract and Chip's particular beef, a failing education system. Chris huffed and puffed in a way which, on any sensible interpretation, amounted to a resignation threat. One likes to think, observed Tory council leader Dave Stuart Riley, that everybody, as they get older, becomes a little wiser. Fleetingly, it seemed to have worked. Older and wiser by a full 48 hours, Chris decided on a better idea than resigning. Make someone else resign. But who should it be? Right on cue, up pops old adversary, AONB chair Jonathan Bacon. Jonathan hasn't resigned from anything for over a year, but boy, when he resigns, he really resigns. Now he's rabbiting subversively on about opposition councillors' right to talk to whoever they like. Bilious statements about the leader of the administration that maintains his organisation, twittered Chris. We're heading firmly into resignation territory. Disobligingly, however, Bilious Bacon decided to hunker down and get on with his job, leaving Chris to revert to Plan A, albeit minus an actual resignation. Fascinatingly, he intends to turn the traditional party system, you apply and the parties decide whether to have you, on its head. His cunning plan is to sit in a corner for months, making notes, and then tell Pugh and co. whether they've behaved well enough to earn his approval, at which point they'll welcome him back with open arms. Or possibly not. This time Chris may finally have overdone it. He seems to be a band of one. His earlier talk of many council colleagues ready to follow his lead had melted away. Solidarity a la Ladies' Glide, a mere flight of fancy. And so I commend to him those lines from Saxon West Wight Kessinger's The Indispensable Man. Take a bucket and fill it with water. Put your hand in up to the wrist. Pull it out, and the hole that's remaining is a measure of how much you'll be missed. You can splash all you wish when you enter. You may stir up the water galore, but stop and you'll find that in no time it looks quite the same.
Decade of dedication to theatre. A decade has passed since Shanklin Theatre was saved from the bulldozers. In 2008, a trusty team of volunteers stepped in to save the day, determined to run it themselves and return it to its glory days. Vic Farrow was quickly appointed managing director and chairman. Self-depreciatingly, he jokes he had a few contacts in the entertainment industry, which was more than anyone else had. Meeting Vic, it's clear it wasn't just his contacts that put him at the helm. He has a passion, a love of the theatre, and enough interest in it that would mean he would happily spend the next 10 years working on the project virtually 24/7. And what a success story it turned out to be. Against all the odds, Shanklin Theatre was very quickly back on its feet and attracting huge audiences to see top performers. Jimmy Carr, Sarah Millican, Al Murray, Russell Watson, Joe Pasquale, Ken Dodd, Jimmy Osmond. The roll call is endless and far too long to list. The building was transformed too, with new seating installed to ensure 615 people have a comfortable experience. It was given a complete makeover. With such a good sound system, many stars choose it over their own. 10 years on from the rescue mission, it is time for change. Vic is now 74, is relinquishing much of his role. He remains as chairman and will look after the plays and musicals. He will be on hand in an advisory capacity, but he is handing over the managing director role to David Cast, who was the chairman of Friends of Shanklin Theatre. A new Friends chairman will be appointed at the AGM on April the 16th. Vic has put a lot of time and effort into rejigging the personnel to create a solid team to reflect the fact Shanklin Theatre is now a big, successful company, turning over £800,000 a year. There will continue to be 3 full-time paid staff and 1 part-time, supported by around 80 active volunteers, a mix that has worked so well over the past decade. Roger Coleman is now taking over the admin and bookings, supported by Lynn Harwood-Jones. Paul Harris will help this team, and Peter Franklin is stepping up into Roger's duty manager role. Louise Bond is in accounts, supported by Trish McMurray and Elizabeth Stevens. Moving with the times, a new part-time role in managing social media has been taken by Matthew Day. Rob Robertson is the IT specialist, and the box office is managed by Sally Sibley and Janet Wardle. Vic reflected on the past 10 years. It became my full-time job. As a volunteer, it took over my life. I couldn't afford to switch off because that would be the one time you'll be offered an act you would love to book. Take your eyes off your phone and you could miss something. Although Vic loves watching the performances and meeting the stars, it's clear the real buzz for him was in securing the acts, getting the big stars to sign on the dotted line. I was so delighted to have secured the likes of Russell Watson, the Osmonds, the Mousetrap and Jimmy Carr. Knowing you've got the big stars coming gives you job satisfaction. It is easier now we are so big, so established. In the early days we had to do the running, approach the agents, but now they come to us. But while it is all very well getting the acts, it would be pointless without the volunteers, as we can't operate without them. There's no reason why the theatre can't go from strength to strength. We have no grants and no loans. It is a nice position to be in. We are dependent on money from the shows, the bar, the ice creams and the bucket collection. We don't charge booking fees, which is very rare. That's how we got Sarah Millican. She made a statement in The Stage about how she was appalled by theatre booking fees, and we approached her to say we agreed and didn't have them at Shanklin. It was instrumental in her coming here. One of the main things I have learned is the public has misconceptions about the theatre. For example, majority of the one-nighters are done on a straightforward commission basis. Excuse me. So people think we are raking it in when we sell 600 seats at £45 each. But it doesn't mean we've made £27,000. We typically get 10% and VAT comes off that too. It's not our show. The acts are basically just using our facilities. One common complaint is about the sound. We get it all the time. At the same show, some people say it's too loud and others say it's too quiet. Everyone's perception is different. We have a sound check for every show and the artist decides the level. Sometimes they bring their own sound engineer, so it is often out of our hands, but a lot use our sound system when they become aware of how good it is. One storm in a teacup was when comedian Ed Byrne posted a photo on social media of the snacks the theatre had given him. The theatre came under fire from people complaining they had been mean to only offer titbits worth £6, and the story went viral. The criticism bruised the volunteers, as within reason they are more than happy to source any snacks requested, and Ed Byrne was given exactly what he had asked for. Vic said often they only want a tea or coffee. Omid Jalili wanted a bag of Maltesers. We just gave them what they want. Vic was the businessman behind the quirky cinema in Lake, Screen Deluxe, which was famed for the hand puppets that entertained the audience before the films began. It was hugely popular, but the time was up when Cineworld opened in Newport, and it closed in 2000. Vic's aim now is to spend a little more time on the golf course. It remains to be seen if he really can lure himself away from his theatre home.
And now, there's a whole mass of small items which might interest you. For instance, and the Isle of Wight branch's second Amnesty International concert on Sunday, the 15th of April at 2:30 at Wootton Bridge Community Centre, featuring the White Satin Ladies, the Irish Dancers, Sounds Lively Choir, and refreshments are available. No tickets required. A retiring collection.
The Isle of Wight Asthma Swim Group offers you free Sunday swims at Medina Pool from 12 till 1 p.m. every second Sunday in the month, and this is for all asthmatics and their families. For further information, contact 564 356.
And there's a Newport Isle of Wight Jazz Weekend, which is at 31st of May to the 3rd of June in 2018. The BBC Big Band, which is Claire Martin, Derek Nash, Skelton Skinner, All Stars, Picanti, Karen Sharp Quartet, Sarah Dowling Quartet, Freddie Gavita Quartet, the Alleycats, Georgia Manchio's Quadro, Craig Milverton, Bruce Adams, Andrew McCormack, Nick Page Quintet, the Isle of Wight Youth Jazz Orchestra, Prohibition Jazz, Urban Nomads. And you see our website for all details. That's on newportjazzweekend.co.uk. And tickets are on sale at the Isle of Wight County Press now.
Make this spring your new beginning, your health and well-being. A free event at the Riverside with information stands and presentations from NHS and other colleagues. This is for everyone interested in staying well, a personal opportunity to meet with professionals from the NHS and the statutory, third and voluntary sectors who will be there to give you support and encouragement. Come along on Wednesday the 18th of April at any time between 14:30 and 20:30. Representatives from pharmacy, dietetics, podiatry and nail cutting services, People Matter, Breathe Easy, British Heart Foundation, Community Navigators, the Sensory Support Service, Sight and Hearing, Physiotherapy, CAB, Osteoporosis, Nurse Specialist and NOS, and Independent Arts, and many others will be there throughout the day to meet you, provide useful information and answer your questions in a friendly environment.
And there's now an open invitation to push the boat out. Islanders have been invited to try sailing as part of the Royal Yachting Association's Push the Boat Out event. Brading Haven Yacht Club, the UKSA Cowes and the Royal Victoria Yacht Club in Fishbourne are among those taking part in next month's event. Each session will run for a minimum of 30 minutes, with the event running from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. on May the 5th at RVYC, and from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. on May the 19th at BHYC, and from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on May the 26th at UKSA Cowes. Whether you're completely new to the sport or looking to get back on the water, the RYA Push the Boat Out initiative is the perfect time to give it a go. Each Push the Boat Out event will provide all the equipment you need. Just bring a change of clothes, sneakers and a towel.
Song specially for St George's Day. Celebrate St George's Day with a concert at St Saviour's Church, Shanklin later this month. Entitled St George's Day 1918, the concert next Saturday, that's April the 21st, will feature songs from music hall, opera, musical comedy and wartime songs, with a patriotic flag-waving sing-along at the end. Performers will include New Church Male Voice Choir, Lucy Stevens, Kim Ball, Janet and Mitch Jones and Canto Bell. People are encouraged to go along dressed up in the style of 1918. Starting at 7:30 p.m, admission is free, with a retiring collection to raise funds for the One Life Festival, a music festival for adults with learning difficulties, taking place on June the 6th at Tapnell Farm near Freshwater.
And that's all we've got time for. So it's goodbye now from me, Peter Boffin, and
it's goodbye from Madeline.
And so you can now listen to the wireless.
This is the BBC.
This is In Touch, the magazine programme for people like me who are blind or partially sighted. I'm Peter Wight. Thanks for downloading this week's edition. Good evening. Tonight, more dark days for the Royal National Institute of Blind People. What does the latest accusation that it's failed to protect some children in its care mean for the organisation and the visually impaired people it was set up to represent? It's been a torrid few years for the RNIB, heavy financial losses, a number of redundancies, and now, after a damning report from the education standards watchdog Ofsted at the beginning of this year, an investigation into its ability to protect adequately children in its care. The Charity Commission is looking into a series of incidents at RNIB Pears Centre in Coventry. That's a school and residential home for visually impaired children with multiple disabilities, including learning difficulties. One of the cases was of a sexual nature, although it's understood that police aren't taking any further action. The RNIB has been told that if major improvements aren't made before the middle of this month, it could lose its registration to run care homes. Amongst the fallout from this investigation has been the resignation of RNIB's CEO, Sally Harvey, after only 6 months in the job. She had been in charge of RNIB Places, that runs homes and residential schools, including RNIB Pears Centre. So what on earth is going on at the RNIB? I'm joined by Eleanor Southwood, who herself has only been chair of the RNIB since last autumn. Eleanor, first of all, can you tell us a bit more about the role of RNIB Pairs Centre and the RNIB's responsibilities in its running and its management.
The RNIB Pairs Centre is a children's home and school based in Coventry. It's one of a number of specialist services that RNIB runs for young people who are visually impaired and who have additional complex health needs.
And can you give us an idea of the other centres like that you run? How many do you run?
The other facilities that we run, the other specialist services that we run include 3 older people's care homes, a supported living facility at Redhill and 2 schools.
And so in terms of the RNIB Pairs Centre, what are the incidents which have triggered let's be frank about this, the disastrous Ofsted report and the Charity Commission's investigation?
I want to start by saying that I am profoundly sorry for what has clearly gone very wrong at the RNIB Pairs Centre. RNIB has clearly let down our young people and let down the families and the carers who've entrusted those young people to us. That's something that we're taking extremely seriously. The Ofsted criticisms are serious. They relate to, over a period of time, concerns that Ofsted have had about the way that the RNIB Pairs Centre is managed.
Can I ask you how long?
The Ofsted notice that we received on the 13th of March goes back to 2015, and the kinds of incidents that are raised as concerns are around medication errors, are around record keeping and general issues of how the centre has been managed by RNIB. This is really serious, and our priority, as I'm sure you'll understand, is the children at the RNIB Pairs Centre. So the focus right now is making sure that those young people are receiving the support and care that they need.
And there was one case of a sexual nature. Can you tell us anything about that?
The incident that the press have picked up is a single allegation that was made. RNIB filed a serious incident report with the Charity Commission on the 2nd of March referring to this allegation. And it was an allegation of potentially abusive practice, and it was of a sexual nature. The local multi-agency team have looked at the incident, and that includes the police, and they have indicated that they will not be taking further action. However, we internally will, of course, be investigating exactly how the circumstances arose that led to the allegation being made. And
how satisfied are you that that's an isolated case?
The primary concerns raised by Ofsted are around management issues and failures, and issues that potentially have put our young people, at risk.
Can I perhaps quote from 2 Ofsted reports 4 years apart, because they make the point. In 2013, RNIB Pairs Centre was rated as outstanding in every category, specifically on safeguarding. The report said individual risk assessments are in place for all students and for all activities they carry out, both on site and during trips. Similarly, arrangements for safeguarding a group who are potentially very vulnerable are of a very high standard. By 2017, the overall assessment was inadequate. Under safeguarding specifically, it said the arrangements aren't effective. The designated safeguarding lead was unaware of previous safeguarding concerns relating to members of staff, as this information hadn't been made available to her prior to the inspection, and leaders were unable to provide evidence that all concerns had been followed up in an appropriate way. How could things have deteriorated so much in such a short time?
The examples are pretty stark, aren't they? And I think they evidence quite clearly that things have gone very wrong over a period of time. And that's why we are going to be imminently doing an independent review looking exactly at what has happened and how. and also to make sure that we can be confident that our staff, our supporters, our volunteers, and of course the children and families can be confident about the services that we're providing.
This does bring us, though, doesn't it, to the other large event that happened last week, the resignation of RNIB CEO Sally Harvey, because RNIB Pears Centre was one of the residential homes and schools on her watch. I mean, how could things go downhill so fast without apparently action being taken to put them right? You said yourself that reports were coming in 2015 that were worrying.
The Ofsted notice makes it very clear that this has not happened overnight, and that over a period of time RNIB has failed. We, at the start of this year, put in place an action plan in response to Ofsted concerns. We didn't act quickly enough, and Ofsted have been clear that our response was inadequate. We're taking that extremely seriously, and that's exactly why the independent review that we are conducting will really get to the heart of exactly who knew what and when, of course, whether escalation processes were in place and also were they appropriately used, and what action was taken.
And I mean, are you able to tell us actually what point Sally was in charge of it? Clearly, as CEO, she was in charge of everything. She was responsible, for example, in 2015 when these reports started to come in.
So Sally moved into the role of acting chief executive in autumn 2016. I'm obviously not going to speculate about what may or may not come out through our independent review, but the review is an extremely important element of us establishing exactly what was known by who and what action was taken and when. And
indeed, that's the point in a way I'm trying to get at, not necessarily to put the finger on Sally, but at the time of her appointment, you said on this programme you thought she was definitely the right person for the job. Isn't it rather surprising that people didn't think, given the timing of these reports, that this might be something that would come back to cause an embarrassment to the RNIB?
So I'm obviously not going to start sort of pointing the finger of blame anywhere right now.
But surely on the business of how you appoint people, doesn't it raise the question that due diligence was maybe not exercised at the time of the appointment, regardless of who it was? Shouldn't somebody have spotted the danger of this situation?
The process that we used for Sally's recruitment, and I remember talking to you about it towards the end of last autumn, the process was a robust one, and Sally was the best candidate through that process.
So you stick by what you said then, which was she's the best candidate, because we did ask you about that in the context of were there any good visually impaired candidates?
Indeed you did, and Sally was the best candidate in that process.
So what do you need to do now as far as RNIB Pears Centre is concerned, and how fearful are you that your registration, your ability to be registered to look after these kind of homes might be removed?
So the priority is obviously the children at RNIB Pears. So we have entirely changed the management structure, and we have brought in independent specialists in children's services to make sure that on the ground what we're doing is appropriate in response to the Ofsted concerns. We have until mid-April to demonstrate to Ofsted that we are meeting their expectations, and they will communicate with us in mid-May in terms of the outcome.
This isn't the only problem the organisation faces, of course. I mean, you've consistently been running a deficit. The RNIB last year, you spent 12.6 million more than you brought in, which is a situation which clearly can't be allowed to go on. What do you say to service users who'll be questioning whether the organisation is in a fit state to run its affairs?
I really understand how this situation would, I think, make it quite difficult for people to have confidence in RNIB. I am absolutely determined that we rebuild that confidence and that trust. And that's with visually impaired people, that's with all of our staff and supporters, and of course, you know, everybody who we are seeking to support. it's so important because the services we provide are vital. Something's gone wrong in part of our organisation, and we will get to the heart of that, and I will ensure personally that we do. For the 250 people who today will be told they are losing their sight, we must be better. We must be better for them, and it is, a future that is worth fighting for.
Yeah.
This is the organisation that made sure that I could read with my fellow pupils when I was at school. This is the organisation that's ensured I'm able to get out and about independently. And it's the organisation that's ensured that people have what they are entitled to in terms of support. That is a future worth fighting for. So we will get through this, and we will be better for it. So the action that we're taking immediately is primarily at the RNIB Pear Centre to put in place robust structures to make sure that the children are getting support.
Can I ask you need, in the short term, an acting CEO, in the slightly less short term, a new CEO. Have you made any appointments yet?
Yes, so we have appointed Elliot Line to be our interim chief executive. So Elliot has been our interim finance director over the past year and has overseen a transformation in our finances. So it has been a really tough time financially for us, along with lots of other charities, and we have had to make some fundamental changes. There is much more change that needs to happen, and to be honest, some pretty radical changes that we need to put in place quickly.
So what kind of CEO are you looking for?
So the process for recruiting our next chief executive will start as soon as possible. We will make sure it is an open process that makes sure that anybody who is interested, and I would love to be able to appoint a blind or partially sighted chief executive to RNIB. So we'll make sure that the process is accessible and as open as possible. So we will shortly be putting out the job description and so on so that everybody can see what we're looking for.
You took over as chair 6 months ago. Did you know what you were letting yourself in for?
I am enormously proud of the work that RNIB does. I am, however, incredibly disappointed and ashamed to have been part of a collective which has gone so badly wrong. Since I became chair, the board has been looking at how we make ourselves more robust in terms of our own governance. We are complying fully with the Charity Commission and with our other regulators and undertaking our own independent review. We will be guided by that in putting in place what we need to do to be the best that we can be. I am personally totally committed to the improvements we need to make. I'm passionate about our future, and I will make sure that we fix this so that we're able to move ahead.
Eleanor Southwood, thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you, Peter.
Well, listening to that is Ian McRae. Ian's been a journalist and broadcaster in the field of disability for around 40 years. He edited Disability Now and indeed has worked in the charity sector. He's also presented and produced this programme, of course, and like many of us, he's an RNIB service user. Ian, you've just listened to that. What are we to make of what's going on at the RNIB?
Well, part of me just thinks that any organisation which is looking after providing services for and residential care for disabled children of any sort really ought to be very hot on the whole business of safeguarding, really. You can...
To a number of blind reporters, she believed that we were able to do it at a time when many believed we weren't able to do it, and she championed our cause. She could also be very tough. I do remember her sending me down to, I think it was Wimbledon in southwest London, to do an interview on one occasion with a Ewer, which were these very heavy reel-to-reel tape recorders we used to record interviews on at the time. And I came back and I hadn't recorded it. It hadn't recorded. And I said to her that this had happened, and there was a long, long pause. And she said, well, you better ring them up and tell them you're coming back again to do it again. And I didn't make that mistake again. I've got her to thank for so much in terms of my career, certainly, and others I know do too. She encouraged us to go further. She pushed us into the wider broadcasting world as well. And really, in that sense, she was before her time. She was a fantastic person to work for, always fair, always rigorous, sound editorially, and incredibly positive about one's work. She'll be missed very, very much.
Gary O'Donoghue, remembering In Touch's definitive producer, Thina Heschel. It was a privilege to have known her. From me, Peter Wight, Cheryl Gabriel and the team, goodbye. A couple of potential disasters to something of a triumph. We can't end